Howdy YouTube, Esnix here with a video for you. What I'm going to do today is cover Arch ISO and how I use it to build my Ezarcher project. Now Arch ISO is the program used by Arch to create their own ISOs. When you go to their download link to download an Arch ISO to install the Arch way. It's also a program you or I can use to build our own Arch-based respins. If this is something that interests you, go ahead, keep watching. If not, there's going to be a long, boring video, so be prepared. Arch ISO has been changing the way it works over the past year drastically, and the way it operates now is very different from the way it operated 6-8 months ago. Now, it took me quite a bit of time and some help from a viewer to get the process working as smoothly as it is right now. Now, the Arch ISO wiki describes a lot of what we are going to do because, because the process described in the wiki I lifted for my own use, as well as you can do the same. I'll put a link to this page in the description, of course, but we will switch over to my build process. Okay, we have a busy screen going on. We have my build folder. Right now we're going to use the KDE template, and I have collected all the files I need for my build, and we'll go through these as the build is progressing. What I'm going to do is start the script's sh file, and while it's running, we'll go through what it's doing, and hopefully in a more written out friendly explanation of what the steps are, rather than looking at the script itself, which if you read Bash, it's very easy to follow. If you don't, then we can follow along with the build instructions, which I now provide. So, let's go ahead and make sure we're root. Yes, we are. We're inside the KDE template folder. Good. Before you start, you want to make sure you've run a full system upgrade. You want to make sure you already have the Arch ISO program and the make init CPIO Arch ISO program installed, or packages installed. And what I do is I clear the cache completely before I do a build. And this forces the Arch ISO program to download all of the packages fresh as it needs it while it's building, which is what you want. If you want to include Calamares in your installation, you're going to have to build Calamares and build the two dependencies, ckb comp and make init cpio open swap, and create your own custom local repository or set up a remote, online repository. Either way, the Arch Wiki has great instructions for how to do a custom local repository. That's what I've chosen to do. If you go this route, you will need to install all of the build and runtime dependencies of Calamares. So I provide those here. Building Calamares is really outside the scope of this video, but it might be a video in the future. For now, we already have the packages built and the repo constructed with the line, where is it? Add repo down here. So you're going to create your repository with the file, with the packages you have. Let's go back to the beginning here. We are going to start the steps sh script and let it start running, and then we'll go talk about it. Very good. So, you can see it created a reling folder. Well, it didn't create it, it copied it. Now, it copied it from usr share archiso configs RELing. RELing stands for Release Engineering, and it is the base of the Arch ISO that you download when you download the Arch ISO from Arch itself. We're modifying this base configuration with this script, with these steps. Before you get to this point, though, you're going to want to decide what programs you want included, what extra files or settings you need to change or include in your build, as well as any options you want to enable, like desktop settings. All of those choices are somewhat outside of this video. I will cover some of the folders I put in and the settings, but desktop changes are really outside the scope of this, because each desktop will require knowing exactly where and how those settings are stored and how to transfer them into the build. XFCE is very easy. All of its settings are in one folder in your .config directory. Other desktops may be more complicated. So, what I have here is an etc folder, what's going to be put into the etc folder of the build, what's going to be put into the opt folder of the build, what's going to be put into the USR folder of the build, and then a few files that will configure the build process and the system itself. Let's cover the opt directory first, because that relates to my custom local repo. In opt, I have a folder, easy repo. In there, I have my Calamares package, my CKB comp, and my make init CPIO open swap. I also have the 4 repo database files. And I think I mentioned those were created with the with the add repo command. I just lost it in my visual here. The add repo command. So you run this as a regular user in the same folder where you have your packages. And you have to specify each package by name completely. Not the package name, the file name. You also give it a repo name, and it has to have the format .db, .tar, .gz. Once you've done that, it's ready and set to be included in your build. Now, this repository exists in 2 places. It exists in the build folder, and it will be included in the build. It also needs to exist in your system itself. So you need to copy that into your opt folder. You can put it anywhere you want, but it has to be specified. And it has to be the same place in the build folder and your system itself. Now my script takes care of that automatically, and then it removes the directory and the repo from your pacman.conf file, because the pacman.conf file in your system has to be edited, as well as the pacman.conf file in the build folder. So in the build folder and in your regular pacman.conf file, you do need to specify your custom local repo. So that covers the opt directory. In the etc directory, we have what will be included in the etc directory of the build system. So I have Calamares folder with the modules, and all the modules have their settings for my use. I have my own branding folder, so the look and messages during the Calamares installation are what I chose. And there's also the general settings file as well. Network Manager, since I use Network Manager instead of systemd network D, I do include one configuration file because I do retain systemd resolve D for DNS resolution. So Network Manager needs to know that. So hence we have one dns.conf file, and it's going to be placed in etc network manager conf.d. We then have one item in the SCEL folder. Now, SCEL are files that are transferred automatically into the home folder of every user created. The only thing I put in at the moment is a symlink to where the Ezarcher documentation and scripts are in the file system, and that's going to be at usr.share/Ezarcher. Now, in this SCEL folder, you can also put things like a custom bash RC script, a custom profile script, a custom anything, really. And it's probably where you'd put any desktop settings or application settings you want included in your build. It's up to you to figure out what you need exactly in your SCEL folder to get transferred into the user folder to achieve the ends you want. That will take time and experimentation to get right. Don't think you're going to get it right off the bat immediately. All of my templates use the default settings for each of the desktops because I don't like dealing with customizing the desktop settings. My assumption is that most users will set it to whatever they want anyway, so why bother putting any work into making it look the way I like? The way I like is probably not the way you like, so I don't customize them at all. That's on you. I provide fonts, I provide some icons, I provide some themes. You can go with what I provide and mix and match. You can add your own. Totally up to you. I give you whatever the desktop environment gives you to start. Next, we have a locale.gen file. Now, this is really just the standard locale.gen file with the language of my choice and necessity by default. EN, US, UTF-8 is uncommented. You can uncomment whatever language you wish. There is a sudoers file I place in the system, and the sudoers file is really just there so that sudo is available to anyone in the wheel group. Oops. Hope I didn't accidentally copy and paste anything there. So, we've covered the etc directory, we've covered the op directory. Let's look at the USR directory. And we'll do this in reverse order. Under Share, I have a folder Ezarcher with my docs, my guides, and my scripts. Nothing special except the scripts are executable. Everything else is not. In the local folder, I have bin, and then I have two scripts. My EasyMate script, which gives you 9 maintenance steps that could be accomplished on an Arch system on a semi-regular basis or occasional basis. I also have a Locale Gen.sh script. Now the purpose of the Locale Gen sh script, we'll open it up and take a look. It runs Locale Gen, and then it removes the systemd unit that starts it. The reason I create a systemd unit to run Locale Gen is because Locale Gen typically or needs to be run by a script called customize airroute fssh. That script is due to be deprecated at some point. In preparation for that deprecation, I've decided to handle the running of Locale Gen myself with a systemd unit on boot rather than during the build process. So the systemd unit runs the script runs Locale Gen, and then this script deletes the systemd unit. So it's not actually on the system when it's finally booted up. The actual Locale Gen service, the systemd service, is in lib systemd system Locale Gen service. If we open that up, we can see all it does is run the Locale Gen .sh script, and it runs it at multi-user target. Hopefully that's all clear. You can always search how to set up your own custom systemd units. It's not very hard. Let me take a quick breather here. Okay, I'm back. So, we've covered the custom local repository. We've covered what's in USR. Let's take a look at the files that we're copying into our build. First thing we're doing is the packages file. Now the packages file has a list of all the packages we want installed in the system. The first 105 lines of my packages file are exactly what's in the Arch ISO default packages file. The next 200 lines are what I've added. I've broken it into several categories, very broad. System-related tools, file system stuff, which is really just GVFS. Multimedia-related packages here. Xorg itself. Networking-related packages. Some miscellaneous desktop stuff like a game and PDF viewer and things like that. Gparted really should probably go in the system, but it is what it is. Doesn't really matter where it is. The fonts collection that I put in, the desktop, and whatever applications are specific to that desktop and shouldn't be in other desktop profiles. The display manager, all of the Calamari's build and runtime dependencies, and then finally Calamari's CKB comp and making it CPIO open swap from my custom local repository. The next file is our pacman.conf. I think I went over that. All it is the standard pacman.conf with my custom local repo. I copy the splash.png image into the syslinux folder of Reling, so it becomes the background of the live boot menu. I copy in my own profile def sh file. Now, we will open this up because this deserves a look. Profile.def.sh is a script that Arch ISO uses for several purposes. First one is naming of the ISO and the publisher, so I modify those lines. More importantly, it sets permissions of specific files in the file system. Now, if you add a lot of files that need to have permissions different from the defaults, and the defaults are for every file, the default permissions is the octal 644. For the folders, the default octal permissions are 755. Now 644 is read and write by owner, read by group owner, owner's group, and read by everyone else. Now there are certain files like the shadow file and the gshadow file and the sudoers file that need to have much stricter permissions. Shadow and gshadow are both readable by owner, and owner's group and everyone else has no access. Same with gshadow. And sudoers needs read by owner, read by owner's group, and no access by anyone else. So those have to be specified manually. Now if I didn't put in my own sudoers file and I didn't create my own gshadow file, I wouldn't have had to add those. At the bottom here are my own scripts. My EasyMaint script, my Locale Gen.sh script, the installers, Ezarcher BIOS and Ezarcher UEFI, as well as EasyMaint in USR share Ezarcher scripts folder. I do put a copy of EasyMaint in local bin just so it's available to run by anyone. Now these all have to be executable. They can't be 644, so they have to be 755. The format of the line is owner, group of owner, and permission of file. Now 0 is root. Root's group is 0, and then root can read, write, and execute. Everyone else can read and execute. And that's the same for all of my scripts. So those all have to be specified individually. Now, if you add files, like a lot of the files I add, there's no need to change permissions, so you don't bother listing them. They just inherit 644 for files and 755 for directories. That covers the profile.def.sh file. We've already covered USR, etc, and opt, so no need to go over those again. Next, systemd units. Now, systemd units, by default in reling in the config, will have systemd network D, which I don't want. So what I do is I remove all of the systemd services related to systemd network D and IWD. I also remove the auto login systemd unit. So this forces login necessity on my live system. Next, I want to replace systemd network D with network manager. So I have to create those symbolic links to the network manager services in systemd. So that's what these 3 lines do. I also need to specify a display manager. Now my build instructions file was written with XFCE in mind. However, if you want to use it with KDE, you would change LightDM to SDDM. And that would create the right system, the right display manager service link where you want it. I also used the HavGet service, so I created that link, and I have to create the custom Locale Gen service unit. Excuse me. So all of that is done in the script in these lines. If you want to do it in your manually, you have to do it one by one, copy and paste the lines. If you don't want to change this stuff and put in Network Manager, you don't have to do any of those. You still probably want a display manager, and if you don't use customize airroot fssh, then you're going to need some way to run Locale Gen. It's up to you how you deal with those issues. This is just the way I've dealt with them. Next we get to users and groups. Now this is explained pretty well in the Arch ISO wiki page. And what I've done is I've taken almost verbatim most of their examples. However, I do it in a certain way. Before we get to creating the password WD file, the group file, the shadow file, and the gshadow file, I set a few variables. I set the username, USR name to live. I set the user password, USR pass, to live. And I set the root password to tour. So those three variables will then be used creating the 4 files that we need to create. I echo in the 2 lines needed in the passwd file. I echo in all of the groups that I want my user to be a member of into the group file. And then when the system is actually built, more groups get created, of course. But this starts out the file. I then use the variables that I set to create the password hashes. Now, the USR hash is created with the command openSSL passwd -6 and the text of the password. Same for the root hash. Now, this process is all mentioned in the Arch ISO wiki. They do it a little differently. They assume that you're going to create the password and then copy and paste the actual hash into the file. I've chosen, however, to use a more automated method that creates a variable and sets that variable to the output of the command. And then when I echo in the hashes into the shadow file, I reference the variables, and that automatically will then put in the hashes generated in the steps previous to it. Everything's piped into the shadow file. Last but not least, I set or copy in 2 lines into the gshadow file. Now the gshadow file will also get more added to it as the system is built. Hopefully that's clear. I know I covered that pretty quickly. All 4 files are necessary for creating your own user. Yeah, I think I covered that. We can see the build process is progressing nicely. We're already at 75%. I don't know what I did to edit. Oh, I know what I did to edit that file. I put in SDDM. We're not going to save it. So let's just undo it. Undo it. There we go. Okay. Now, we're getting into some territory where the Arch ISO wiki doesn't help. It doesn't have anything to do with this. We're going to echo in our key map. So key map equals US, and we're going to put that in the file vconsole.conf. Now, this directory already exists. Reling, airroot fs, etc. So we can just do this step. The next step is creating a section for the xorg.conf.d file. That file lives, the 00 keyboard.conf file. That file lives in the xorg.conf.d directory. That doesn't exist yet in the build folder. So the first thing we have to do is create that folder, and then we can echo in the contents we want into the file 00keyboard.conf. And this will set up the keyboard for us the way we want it to. You can change any of these settings that you want before you build. I then echo in lang equals US UTF-8 to the locale.conf file, not locale.gen or, the locale.conf file. The last thing I do is run reflector to get the last 3 hours of updated mirrors that are just HTTPS and save that mirror list where it needs to be saved. After all of that is done, and all of that takes 2 seconds when it's scripted. If you're copying and pasting this can take a while. But when you're all done with that, running MK Arch ISO, I run it with the V switch for verbose, so you get all this nice output. Right now you do have to specify the work directory, and I specify the current directory, subdirectory work. I specify the output directory, current directory, subdirectory out, and then the profile directory, reling, inside the current working directory. And you saw all the output. The resulting ISO for KDE, 1.8 gigs. Hefty, right? Now, like any good chef, I've taken the liberty of producing that file before I did the video. So we're going to take a look at it boot up here. I'll pause the video 1 moment. Okay, I'm back. Just had to take a quick drink, clear my throat again. So we are booting up into KDE desktop of my Ezarcher Arch-based ISO. We'll get to our SDDM login screen any moment now. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, learned the process a little bit more. I'm sure I'll be covering some of this again as Arch ISO changes. But for now, it seems to work pretty well. I know over the past couple of weeks I've had to make slight corrections and adjustments to the build instructions file, to the steps file. So I've been uploading, it feels like constantly. I think I'm done for a little while unless someone finds a grievous error. Nice KDE desktop. You know what, let's change that to application menu. And take a quick peek. Got some development stuff. Got card games, 1 card game. Got some graphics software, some internet software, quite a bit of multimedia software, a little bit of office software. I forgot Ocular. You don't need PDE, PDF, and Ocular. So that's one little tweak. I could remove ePDF from my packages file for the KDE build. Settings, system. Discover is included with KDE desktop here. And I did also remember to include, finally, the package kit-qt5 backend So Discover should work just fine. What else do we have here? Install system. Now when you run Calamares, it will want the password. And Calamares launches right up. Cool. This warning I'm getting only on the KDE Arch spin here. It's about low memory or low disk space in the home folder. As I said, it's the only desktop that seems to be giving this warning. I forgot to check whether the other desktops have the same amount of space, and KDE just wants to warn you of that, and no other desktop warns you. But it's about 35 megabytes available in the home file system here. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it is running on RAM. I increased the RAM of the machine. It still didn't make any difference in the warning message or the amount of space in home. So I'm not sure what exactly is causing that. But you can see it runs just fine. You can install it with Calamares. You can go into your home folder, go into Ezarcher, which is a symlink to USR Ezarcher, and you can install with one of my scripts. You can install with one of my guides, or you can just read the docs. As I said, hopefully this helps someone, and if it helps you, great. If it doesn't interest you, and I realize I'm talking to about 0.00% of the Linux community here with all this building ISO stuff. I was reminded of that recently in the comments in a live stream that I cater to a very, very small fraction of Linux users. That doesn't bother me. I don't mind that. It does keep my views low, but it keeps the comment sections manageable, and I can respond to most people very quickly. So that's a good thing. Okay, hope you enjoyed this video. If you need help with any particular aspect of building, just let me know, and I'll try to be of assistance. Bye-bye, folks. You'll see me in another one. Oh, Merry Christmas.